North Carolina fires Mack Brown. Right decision, wrong method.
This is Tyler Hansbrough, and you're listening to Locked On Tar Heels.
You are Locked On Tar Heels, your daily podcast on the UNC Tar Heels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, what's up? It's Tuesday, November 26th, 2024. Welcome into the Locked On Tar Heels podcast, the only daily North Carolina show out there. I'm your host, Isaac Shade, and you're joining me at the place to get your Carolina content every single day. It's all part of the Locked On Podcast Network. This live reaction show is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Welcome back into the everydayers out there joining us, all the Locked On Tar Heels Discord members and insiders. If it feels like we just did this, it's because we just did this like an hour or two ago. And literally while we were recording our live reaction this morning following Carolina's big comeback win late last night over Dayton, news started breaking. In fact, I first saw it on our chat that Carolina had fired Mack Brown. And look, here's the deal, kind of big picture I want to talk about is I think ultimately this is the right decision. I think ultimately Carolina's going about this a weird way, at least with what we know right now. You know, maybe more news comes out, but we'll get there. So here's what I want to do. Very quickly, just get through the details, go through that, talk about it, and then we'll get to some takes and talking points and things that we need to be thinking on moving forward. We'll see if you got some comments or thoughts in the chat, and then we'll get on with our Feast Week Tuesday. It's almost time for Maui Invitational to start back up wildly enough. So very quickly, the details. North Carolina is 44-32 in Mack Brown 2.0. He's got 113 wins at North Carolina. That's the most ever by a Carolina coach. As a reminder, Coach Brown coached at North Carolina from 1988 through 1997. Came back around about this time in 2018 and has coached since the 2019 season. This is season number 6. Has made a bowl every year. Only one that first year was Sam Howell at the helm, but made obviously the Orange Bowl. And hopefully the Tar Heels can win a bowl this year again. The question will be who's going to be the head coach when that happens. According to Taylor Vipolis from Inside Carolina and his reporting, the Carolina school officials reached this conclusion, this decision on Monday. Mack Brown told the team this morning. From Carolina's own statement about this, Coach Brown will coach the team this Saturday against NC State. You know that's going to be what was already an emotionally charged game, made all the more so by this news and everything around it. I do want to read, in case you haven't seen it or heard it yet, the statement from Bubba Cunningham and then also the statement from Mack Brown. Bubba says, quote, Mack Brown has won more games than any football coach in UNC history, and we deeply appreciate all that he's done for Carolina football and our university. Over the last 6 seasons, his second campaign in Chapel Hill, he has coached our team to 6 bowl berths, including an Orange Bowl, while mentoring 18 NFL draft picks. He and his wife, Sally, have done an outstanding job supporting the Carolina community, including raising funds for UNC Children's Hospital while hosting other popular events such as the Ladies' Day Clinic. Both also have been terrific in leading our program during some incredibly tough stretches, including the tragic passing of wide receiver Tylee Kraft this season. Coach Brown has led the Carolina football program back into the national conversation as we improve the program's facilities, significantly increased the size of the staff, invested in salaries, and bolstered our nutrition and strength and conditioning programs. He also has been a dedicated fundraiser, strengthening the football endowment while also supporting our other sports programs. We thank Coach Brown for his dedication to Carolina and wish him, Sally, and their family all the best. That's again from AD Bubba Cunningham. Mack Brown's statement. And this is a read between the lines kind of moment here. Quote, while this was not the perfect time and way in which I imagined going out, no time will ever be the perfect time. I've spent 16 seasons at North Carolina and will always cherish the memories and relationships Sally and I have built while serving as head coach. We've had the chance to coach and mentor some great young men, and will miss having the opportunity to do so in the future. Moving forward, my total focus is on helping these players and coaches prepare for Saturday's game against NC State and give them the best chance to win. We want to send these seniors out right, and I hope our fans will show up Saturday to do the same, end quote. Mack Brown, classy as you would always expect from him. But man, you read it between the lines right out of the gate. While this was not the perfect time and way in which I imagined going out, like as he has said, like as recently as yesterday and had talked about last week, he was in to keep going. And that makes this kind of all the more awkward and painful and weird for us to reckon with. Mack Brown had 3 years left on his contract. The Carolina statement says that will be paid through the athletics department, not through state funds. So that's where we're at with this thing right now. That's the details of it. And then we got to start reckoning with thoughts and fallout and all these kind of things. So I think the News and Observer headline says it very perfectly, and it helps lead into my thoughts on it. The headline is, quote, just because UNC had to move on from Mack Brown doesn't make it any easier. And I think that, I said that earlier this season. I think it was after the Georgia Tech loss. It's unfortunate, but it's time. It is time for North Carolina to make this decision. It might have been time last offseason, but it's hard because you want to allow a head coach the magnitude of Mack Brown right off on into the sunset under his own terms and conditions, as Rory Williams did, for example, as Anson Dorrance just did, as Karen Shelton recently did for Carolina field hockey, right? Like you've got all of those sorts of things, and Mack Brown now doesn't get the opportunity to do that. So it's not easy because he is such a good, gregarious man, somebody that people want to be around, somebody that people like, somebody that gets it and understands how to interact with media and do things like that. But that said, just because of all of the personal side you love about Mack Brown doesn't mean you can't pull the trigger on what you should do with the professional side. But where I'm at is that this feels icky and weird and odd to fire Mack Brown right now rather than allow him to announce that he's retiring. Now, maybe because of his recent statements about wanting to keep going, he might have been behind the scenes. We don't know this yet as I record this. He might have been offered that option by Bubba Cunningham and said, no, you're going to have to fire me. And if so, then we need to pull back and frame this a different way. But with everything we know right now, this is not a good look to me from the athletic department to handle it this way. That said, I do think the timing of this is good because it allows you to work on a successor in a good time frame. Because one of the big wins you get of making a bowl is those extra weeks of practice ahead of next season. So it's like pre-spring practice, spring practice. And so if Carolina, who I think is very right to have Coach Brown coach Saturday against NC State, but then if you can go ahead and get his successor in, then that person will have multiple weeks to learn his personnel and all of that ahead of the bowl game, which then springboards you into spring practice instead of spring practice being that moment which springboards you into fall practice. So I actually, while I don't like the method and the framing of this, I do like the timing of it a good bit. Another reason I like the timing of it is because it allows you to try to do everything you can to hang on to recruits. There are some that had already been hemorrhaging. For example, literally this morning, Tuesday morning, in the aftermath of this news, 4-star edge Xavion Griffin-Haynes has already announced he's out. He's decommitting from North Carolina. Now, as happens a lot, guys will still reconsider once the new coach is announced. So we'll have to keep our eyes on that, right? Like, will Griffin-Haynes and other recruits come back around to Carolina? We don't know right now. But going ahead and announcing the intention of what's going to happen lets you start figuring some of that out. And let's be honest, Carolina had already been hemorrhaging recruits because of the lack of clarity on the Mack Brown situation. So now we have that clarity, and now young men can make their decisions based on that. So you're going to have some like Xavion Griffin-Haynes saying, all right, Coach Brown's out, I'm out. But you're going to have others that say, okay, now I know, and I'm I'm ready to wait and see who the new guy is, and then maybe I recommit or reconfirm my commitment. I think this timing is also very helpful with portal movement because Carolina now can start thinking about, okay, what do we need to go get? We already knew there was going to have to be a significant portal haul on the defensive side of the football. And Coach Brown even has recently said that, like, hey, our high school class isn't going to be very big in this class, but our portal class will be. And I think all the more so now because of this personnel change is part of it. So again, it feels very odd to me to fire Mack Brown rather than him resigning. Again, it could be semantics of how Coach Brown wanted to handle it. But also, I think the timing is right. But it's also very weird after Coach Brown's recent comments about, yeah, I'm here. I'm going to go beyond 2024. Even yesterday, telling reporters, quote, I've said I'm going to do it as long as I'm happy, as long as I'm healthy, and as long as I'm effective. I'm not going to think about retiring. I'm not going to talk about retiring, end quote. That's awkward, you guys. Literally yesterday, while Carolina officials were talking about this decision, Mack Brown was saying, no, I'm here. That's painful, right? So again, some weird things, but there you go. However, what I just said about the transfer portal, in the NIL era, we have often seen a change at the head coaching level actually be good for recruiting and for NIL dollars, because there's just something about like the newness that makes donors want to give and contribute and to be part of what's going on. And so look, that could be a possibility for this, is that maybe it brings in, because let's be honest, the fan base wasn't exactly like, yay, feeling great about everything. But when you bring in somebody new, at least the last couple of years, what we've seen across the national landscape at both like football and basketball, like think about John Calipari coming to Arkansas, man, that Arkansas fan base has been galvanized to give and give and give. And obviously they got a lot of money with Tyson and Walmart and all that, whatever. But you just see this when there are changes right now in personnel with head coaches. So will that be true for Carolina? We don't know. All right. Speaking of which, what is next? And I think we need to be careful with what we wish for. A couple more things to talk about. We'll see if there's some questions and comments, and then we're going to get out of here and get on with our Tuesday. All that coming up in just a second. Right after I tell you about our good friends at Game Time. Y'all, college basketball season is here. Today is day 2 of the Maui Invitational. Carolina, that massive comeback yesterday against Dayton, now has a chance to face off against Auburn, who also had a big comeback. Man, the college basketball energy is incredible. You don't know what's going to happen. Comebacks like this, UConn coming all the way back and not being able to complete it. It's great stuff. And you need to get in on the action so you can see these things happen live. Game Time has this new feature, in fact, called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite teams to see them play even easier. What it does, Game Time Picks, is filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to filter through everything else. And it's not just for basketball or football. It's for concerts, comedy, theater, and more. So whether it's Game Time ticket coverage, the lowest price guarantee, or the panoramic views from your seat right there in the app, Game Time's got you covered. Upcoming next Wednesday, Carolina hosts Alabama in the ACC SEC Challenge. There are tickets now for as low as $43 in the app in the upper level, man. It's not even on the baseline. It's in a corner, so you get a better view of the court, man. That's great. Go check it all out right now at Game Time. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. Download the app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Terms do apply. Download the Game Time app today. What time is it? It's game time. Okay, let's keep going with these storylines here as we think about what's going on. Now, one of the things I think we need to recognize is true is that while I said I think this is the right decision for North Carolina and the decision that they needed and had to make, yeah, be careful what you wish for, right? Because outside of the 2 Mack Brown eras, Carolina has not exactly been a juggernaut of football. There have been possibilities, but it's not always gone exactly smashingly, right? We saw how things ended right before Mack Brown. Like it just didn't look all that great. And so I think there is a level of be careful what you wish for, while at the same time saying I think that this is the right move. But we got to wait and see what is now ahead. Part of that is, we're talking about hanging on to recruits. I think the person we're all curious to see is what happens with Bryce Baker. Can Carolina hang on to their prized quarterback recruit? I don't know, man. You know that other schools have already, I pick up my hand like I'm going to call him. You know that other schools have already been checking in and talking to Bryson. And I hate that. That's tough for him, right? Like he's just catching strays because Mack Brown is fired, but it's part of the game, man. And so we're going to see that. Kendra Harrison, the prized number 1 tight end commit in the 26 class, and also a high-level basketball recruit, is set to announce his commitment this Saturday. Part of that is right now the big expectation is that he's going to go to Oregon because it is a football-heavy recruitment. But this in-state kid who so many Carolina people were like, we got to get him. Maybe this news ends up being something that whoever's the next guy can circle back around to Kendra and say, hey, look, here's what we're doing. Here's where we're going. I need you on board, brother. You just don't know. That might be what it's going to take for this thing. That said, the question that everybody always wants to talk about in moments like this is who's next? A lot of times there's always the conversation with, are you conducting an internal or external or both sort of search? That said, I don't think it's anyone on staff. I personally would not go with Chip Lindsey. Obviously, Jeff Collins has that head coaching experience, and I think people look at that and say, yeah, but he was bad at Georgia Tech, not a good record. But you got to remember the context of that moment. He's taking over for Paul Johnson's triple option team and has to completely flip the personnel. In today's day and age with the portal and NIL and all that, it's still difficult, but it's doable. Pre-transfer portal, forget it, man. He was in a no-win situation there. So if Carolina promotes from within, I would see it being Jeff Collins over Chip Lindsey. That's my 2 cents on that. Another part of this is I think so many people, and I think I'm certainly guilty of this as well, have said, I don't know that Carolina is all that glorious and desirable of a head coaching position for football. Basketball, yeah, but you're always going to be second fiddle to the basketball and maybe to women's soccer and women's basketball and men's, but there's just some other things. No, football is second at Carolina, but that is part of it. Here's what's interesting to me. Josh Pate, big college football name, tweeted after the Mack Brown news. So it wasn't just any coincidence. He tweeted after the Mack Brown news earlier Tuesday. I think people would be shocked at how highly the North Carolina football job is viewed within the coaching industry. So I think that is something to keep in mind, right? Like, I think maybe we internally don't see this as a high profile job at the SEC or Big Ten level, and maybe not that level, but it is right there because it's North Carolina. So that's something to be aware of. That said, let's just look at some names. One thing I want to say right out of the gate, though, is I would like to see Carolina not go for an older, established coach. I think that is something the fan base is going to want to see, kind of a pendulum swing to a younger coach, whether it's a head coach or a coordinator, or maybe you could steal somebody from the NFL at a coordinator level. I think it needs to be somebody younger with some, updated ideas, some youthful vigor that would be good for things. That said, you're going to hear Dan Mullen's name. I don't think Carolina, the fan base, nor do I think the athletic department, Bubba Cunningham, trustees, whomever, would go for another hire somebody from the media route. It's just because that's what you just had. And I just don't see that as a viable option because of that. So I don't think Dan Mullen would be in on it. Similarly, I don't think you're going to hear Jeff Saturday's name. I don't think that's a route Carolina will go with this thing. I think you probably have a conversation with Jeff Saturday. I don't think that's ultimately where the Tar Heels land. Something that is very intriguing to me And I think it's because you see it at Indiana. Indiana, what did they do this year? They are not a football school by any stretch of the imagination, but they just lost for the first time to Ohio State. And it's been a quick turnaround very quickly. What did they do? They went out this offseason and got James Madison's head coach, Curt Cignetti, brought him in, and he's just continued to win as what he's done. So what could Carolina's version of Curt Cignetti be? Because you're not going to get him from Indiana now. I think it's one option would be Liberty head coach Jamie Chadwell, who is 21-3 in his 2 years at Liberty. I don't know specifically if it's Chadwell, but man, that's somebody I'm giving a phone call to and saying, we need you in Chapel Hill, Jamie. It's clearly proven to be a route that can work. Now, because Carolina is higher up the food chain than Indiana, at least I would say in football things, maybe not in finances right now because of the Big Ten over the ACC. That's a doable thing for the Tar Heels, in my opinion. But some other options that might be in that vein. You're going to hear Tulane head coach John Summerall's name tossed about. I like that. He's been doing good things at Tulane, but not just at Tulane. This is his second stop, if I'm thinking correctly, as a head coach. And so it's like somebody else that's kind of moving up the ranks. A couple other head coaches I've thought about or heard, whatever, any of those. Barry Odom from UNLV, Matt Campbell at Iowa State. That's obviously another power level coach, but maybe you could go get him because Iowa State, has started well this year, probably similar to Indiana, not as high up in the echelon of college football ranks. So it's, again, worth the conversation. I don't know if you could pull him from Iowa State, but you got to talk to him about it. A couple other names, a couple other defense, or not specifically defensive, a couple other coordinators that's kind of on my radar that I would like. One of whom I said Carolina should have gone to get when they got Chip Lindsey is Garrett Riley, who is Clemson's offensive coordinator. I just, 2 seasons ago, after Longo moved on, I said, go get Garrett Riley and allow him to be your coach in waiting for Mack Brown. Well, they didn't do that, but now's your chance to just go get him from Clemson. And I think that is a good option. A couple other coordinators. Another big-time offensive coordinator is Will Stein at Oregon. Another name is Georgia defensive coordinator Glenn Schumann. And so those are just some of the names that I'm thinking on. You're going to hear more. And obviously, Bubba's going to make calls to probably most of these guys, if not more. And then we'll start to hear things. But I think that is kind of a list of who I'm looking at and some names I'm like. Some kind of, next tier down head coaches, some next tier up coordinators. I think those are some of the places you go. And you see some of the potential through lines with that of things that could work. So crazy news, unexpected news on Tuesday morning. But there we go. Let me see really quickly in the comments if there's anything we should do, hit on here. This is from Blanton Stamey, who says they better let him, Coach Brown, coach the bowl game if he wants to. He's done a ton for this program, both in the 90s and recently, contrary to what fans would want us to believe. Emotionally, Blanton, I am with that. And that's why I wanted to bring this up, because I think it's so hard in these moments to disassociate the emotion from what needs to happen. Kind of similar to Carolina not going to the NIT a couple seasons ago. If you don't have a successor found or picked yet, then yes, let Mack Brown coach the bowl game. If not, I think is critically important for the new person, if he is installed by that point, to be allowed to coach the bowl game, to get those weeks of reps with his new kids. And so I that would be what I would want to see. And so, man, it stinks, but this is the way forward. So Blanton, I hear your heart behind that, and my heart is with that. But the professional side of it, if there's somebody else ready to go, that's where you got to do. T-Man hops in and says, hey, Isaac, I tried to tell you in the other live because it happened during the basketball live. So if you were with us in our basketball live show this morning, this news actually broke while that was going on, just because we had so much to get to. I didn't actually go to the chat to even look at it while we were live, because it was like recapping the game, previewing Auburn, and I knew we wouldn't have time. And then as I scrolled through it afterwards, there's this whole rash of Mack Brown just got fired after that. So thank you, T-Man and everybody else for hopping in to try to do that. Look, also T-Man says, CBS threw out Deion Sanders for us, along with the Tulane coach and others. Sure, I hear it and I get it. I don't see Bubba going for that. I just don't think. In fact, our Locked On Colorado host texted me after this news broke, Kevin Borba, shouts to Kevin, and he said, Isaac, you should just talk about Deion and put that in your thumbnail just because everyone will click on it. And it's like, yeah, I mean, like I hear that and I get it, but come on, man. Like, I don't think that's the play there. So yeah. And then here, I mentioned maybe an NFL coordinator. Several people have mentioned, as Uthman J says here, Hail Mary hire, give Ben Johnson, who's the Lions offensive coordinator, a blank check. I'm all about, like, don't say no for somebody. Make them tell you no. So go. Why not, man? The Lions are on a roll. I like Ben Johnson. I think it would be a great hire. So yeah, let's make it happen. JC Fox is hopping in real time and says, rumor is that Mack forced it, was offered to retire and said no. Given his comments earlier in the week, he forced UNC to make it awkward. So as I said earlier on the show, that's a very strong possibility. That could be a thing that Mack was like, no, I'm not. You're going to have to fire me. And so if that's the case, that explains what's going on here, but that still makes it look awkward on Carolina for their handling of it. So JC bringing that to us. All right, gang. So hopefully no more breaking news today that we need to break in with to talk about together. And that'll be that. Again, my plan right now is to go live after the game tonight because I'm in Central Time. So it'll just be like midnight or shortly after my time. So would love to do that after Carolina Auburn tonight. We'll see what happens. And then obviously we will go live with our full Wednesday show tomorrow morning. Coach Pat Kilby's going to join me for that. Should be a lot of fun. All right. Thanks so much for joining me on this. If you haven't subscribed to Locked On Tar Heels on YouTube and on audio, man, go ahead and do so to make sure you don't miss a second. Hit that bell notification also so you get live notifications when we go live or a new episode drops. If you haven't joined the Locked On Tar Heels Discord, man, come on in. It's free to join. The link for that is in the show notes, as is the link for Locked On Tar Heels Insiders. If you want to go deeper with our program, man, would love to have you do that. And it's a great way to help support the show. Lots of perks there. All right, guys, we'll talk soon. Always a great day to be a Tar Heel. But until then, peace.